This week for Theme Deck Tuesday, I'm going all the way back to when I first opened up my online account and I was presented with a handful of theme decks, and this was one of them. It's called Basic Orange because they couldn't think of a better name, but it essentially is a fighting type theme deck and a very fun one at that if you can get it set up, as you are able to get infinite HP with an ability on one of these Pokemon. I'll discuss that in the deck profile and we'll get into it in the matches as well, but as always, if you're new here, be sure to subscribe to the channel as I do post content multiple times a week and it's usually pretty fun stuff like this. Let's get into it. So here we have the deck list for Basic Orange, and we'll just mainly focus on the primary Pokemon that we're going to be attacking with in this deck. Now it's a very Pokemon heavy deck, that's why we're going to be focusing on the main ones, and it is of course the Conkeldurr here. Now this is a pretty old card as you can see, but it's a real shame because I feel like we've not had a Conkeldurr for a long time, so I'd love to bring this card back or something similar. But the whole awesome part of this deck is this ability right here, Craftsmanship, which makes it so that this Pokemon gets plus 20 HP for each fighting energy attached to this Pokemon. You can see here that we have a 4 energy attack cost, so as a base, just in order to attack with this Pokemon, you're going to be increasing your HP by 80. So of course, if you just attach a 5th energy, it's not going to make a huge difference, but if you attach a 5th energy, it's going to be an increased HP of 100, and you're going to have a total of 240 HP. If you just want to be attacking, then sure, you can settle with 220, but ultimately with this Pokemon in this deck, you want to just stack as much energy on here as possible so you can tank a bunch of hits and live as long as possible, essentially. So that is the main goal here. You want to use Craftsmanship to get 240, 260 HP, maybe more if you get the chance, and then with the attack here top down, not doing a huge amount of damage, only 80, but of course if you're going to be surviving for a bunch of turns, then 80 is just fine. And then you do also get to flip a coin until you get tails, and for each head you are discarding cards from your opponent's deck. So there's a very small chance that you could just get heads infinitely until you discard your opponent's entire deck, but for the most part, with my bad luck, I just get tails instantly, so that never happens. But we do have some other interesting Pokemon here that we can work with. We do have an efficient attacker. If we want to look at something that would be considered a modern Pokemon for a modern theme deck, it would be the Mienshao right here, as it is a stage 1 and it can deal 50 damage for just 2 energy, so really efficient there. And it does also ignore resistance on that first attack for 30 damage, so not terrible, but everything else being a fighting Pokemon with a high retreat cost and a high attack cost here. As you can see, something like a Gigalith can power itself up, to be fair, discarding the top 5 cards of your deck. Any fighting energy gets attached to itself, and then you do 40 damage and it's increased for the energy attached to itself. So very good attacker as you are thinning the deck and powering itself up in that regard, but everything else for the most part is too high of an attack cost, and you really are focused in on the Conkeldurr. And of course, the fact that this is an old theme deck, you can see that the trainer cards are very lackluster. We only have a total of 4 supporters in the entire deck, 2 of them being Churn, so you can draw 3 cards, and 2 of them also being N, which is actually an extremely good supporter card, allowing you to shuffle your hand into your deck, and then you get cards equal to the prize cards, and your opponent also has to do this. So we can keep sacrificing Pokemon in the early game, put my opponent down to a low hand size, and then we can go in with our powered up Conkeldurr. Now we do also have a nice card here in the Giant Cape, which increases Pokemon HP by 20, so this is just another way to buff our Conkeldurr, and that's the main way that we're going to do that. So we do have a heavy ball here to search out Conkeldurr and any other big fighting Pokemon, but that is the only search that we have in terms of Pokemon, unfortunately. Let's get into some matches with this. We do have some interesting time with this deck, I'll say that, but it's certainly not going to be competitive against modern theme decks, but against old theme decks where the balance of the decks is fairly even and you're both playing extremely slowly, then you definitely have a good chance with this deck. And it's certainly a lot of fun to have close to 300 HP in a format where everything else has around 100 HP or 150 HP. So certainly a lot of fun for that reason, and that is the main reason that I wanted to play this deck and show it off, because I certainly have some fond memories playing this deck back in the day when I first got my online account here. So let's see what we can make happen with it, and be sure to give the video a like if you do enjoy it. Let's get into it. Looks like our first game is miraculously against another new player, or I guess they might just be wanting to have some fun as well, but they're going to be using the beginner's psychic deck over there. Definitely a good matchup, as it's going to be fairly even in terms of the power of these decks. We're going to both be playing very slowly overall and looking to set up some big stage 2 Pokemon. We also start off with one of our few supporter cards, so definitely can't complain there, and the rest of our hand is certainly a lot of Pokemon, so let's try and find some energy that we can work with. Doesn't look like we're going to be getting a turn 1 energy attachment, which is the whole reason that you want to be going first, of course. And at the very least, we do have our stage 2 in our hand right here. We have the Conkeldurr, and that's all we could really ask for. Now, luckily, the Conkeldurr for my opponent is weak to Psychic, so it's going to make it very difficult to actually get that guy going. But yeah, we'll have to see what we can go for here. Maybe we can get 2 of them set up if my opponent goes slow enough for us. We'll have to see though. But we get the Giant Cape. I guess we can attach that. We just get the Heavy Ball. Really miss Heavy Ball. It's such an awesome card, allowing you to search out a Pokemon with a high retreat cost. Super cool, and we can then evolve it right there. Nothing else that we want to do here, as we just want energy cards. Never thought I'd actually want energy cards in a theme deck, especially the fact that we have quite a few of them in this deck and we've not able to see any so far. Not super reassuring, but my opponent does get an energy down on their end, so they're up to energy, and they also find a supporter card allowing them to draw 3. They've got the Professor's Letter. Man, can I not borrow that? Give me some of those energies. You don't need them. You already have 2 energy on the board. I want those energies. Yep, there's the Psychic energies. I'm pretty sure that deck doesn't play any split energy lines. It is just Psychic energy. And they do get another Heads, which is going to paralyze us again. No big deal, as it's not going to be super relevant. We do get an energy search of our own, so looks like my opponent does allow us to borrow the energy search essentially, but we only get the 1 energy, whereas my opponent gets 2. Definitely a much better trade off overall. Just have to pass over to my opponent, as we do need another 3 energy before we can actually attack with Conkeldurr. Now it is going to be dealing 80 damage, which is pretty nice, and then we can hopefully try and discard a couple of cards from the top of their deck. The main thing here is it's going to have a lot of HP, but like I said, with that Psychic weakness, it's going to be pretty scary against my opponent's deck. Really wish it was weak to Grass instead, like some of our other Pokemon. I'm pretty sure we have some Pokemon that are weak to Grass. I can't remember which ones it is now. Is it this guy? Yeah, there we go. The Boulder line is weak to Grass, so really wish Conkeldurr was weak to Grass as well, but I guess that's not going to be. And we can just put down a Boulder, I suppose. We'll pass over to my opponent once again. They are just continually trying to paralyze us, while they also build up a big bench Pokemon here. They have the Golett, trying to get that Golett into play with all those energies. It's definitely going to be a good position for my opponent to be in. So we'll just continue to do the exact same here, build up our energies, and hope that we can get a big enough couple of knockouts here. Really wish we had an N. That would really help to refresh our hand, and honestly just give us a hand of energy. Just give me 6 energy here, that would do me just fine, as we do have a secondary attacker here in the Boulder. That would allow us to deal 80 damage as well, or if the defending Pokemon has a fighting type, then we could always deal additional damage, but of course that's not going to be relevant in this matchup. It's only going to be relevant in a mirror match or a pseudo mirror match, I suppose. Speaking of pseudo, I guess Pseudo Widow is a fighting type Pokemon, so would be relevant there, and some of the modern decks do play Sudowoodo. My opponent does get another paralysis, but that's going to be fine as we have our game plan sorted. We're just continually to draw, hoping that it's an energy card, and then proceeding to attach that energy card onto our Pokemon. We can then pass over to my opponent, where my opponent does the exact same thing. They have mixed it up this time. They got a Tails on that paralysis, which is perfectly fine by me. And we get a Drillbur, so we can then get an Excadrill, which is pretty sweet. Excadrill is a pretty cool Pokemon if you ask me. We can always switch into it as well if we would need to. It does have some pretty high attack costs though. This attack isn't affected by resistance, but we're only dealing 70 damage with it. And the fact it is a 4 energy attack cost is pretty abysmal. As you can see, these old theme decks just do not hold up with the super high attack costs that they have, and really mediocre damage. Some of the modern theme decks, you can deal 70 damage for just 2 energy, and yeah, when you're dealing that amount of damage for 4 with these decks, it's just not even comparison. There's no comparison to be made there. It's just that terrible. My opponent does have an escape rope, so they've had enough of this paralysis nonsense, the whole attaching energy thing. They don't want to do that anymore. They're going to use the escape rope so they can start dealing some damage and taking some knockouts. They have the Miltank, which is weak to fighting, so we could actually deal some damage to it, but we don't quite have enough energy, and of course we still don't have enough energy. We only get a heavy ball, but that can at least get us another evolution line here, getting us the Girder, and we could actually pull off the double Conkeldurr. Definitely not something that I expected, but we're not going to be able to get enough energy onto them anyway. But really just the fact that we are getting 2 Conkeldurr down and into play in one game is pretty impressive, and honestly that's a win right there. We might as well end the video right there. That is a win. The fact that we even got one to play with how inconsistent these decks are, the fact that we've only had one supporter which is drawing us 3 cards, super inconsistent, but hey, at least we got 2 of them into play. That's all we can really ask for here. Let's put up another sacrificial Pokemon here. We do get, oh my god, we have 3 stage 2 Pokemon in play. This is insane. This is unheard of. Let's go for a switch so that my opponent can't take another prize here, at least for another turn. And yeah, we can even look at the Gigalith here. Again, massive 4 energy attack cost, but it does have a pretty sweet attack, to be fair. Can scale up quite nicely, but the fact that we have 3 stage 2 Pokemon in play, one of them hasn't even got enough energy yet. We've only found 3 energy this game. There's another Pokemon. I think we have more Pokemon in play than, not even in play, but in our deck than we do energy. This is crazy. We get another evolution, so we now have 0 basic Pokemon in play. They're all evolved, which is insane in itself, but my opponent is able to deal 60 damage consistently with that Miltank, which is going to allow them to get a knockout. So I guess we'll promote yet again another sacrificial Pokemon. There's a fighting energy that we can finally attach, and of course I suppose we could have attached it onto the active here to use the attack on our Mienshao, but it does only deal 30 damage, so not going to be super great. And of course the other attack does deal 50, which would be enough to get a knockout on the Miltank with the weakness, but that would have taken another turn. And oh my god, we top deck the N here. I can't even speak, but it's that exciting in this matchup. I did ask for the N earlier to refresh our hand, and I guess my deck was just waiting for us to get down to 0 cards, so we'll take that. We get the energy here that we can work with. Honestly, let's just start attaching onto a second Conkeldurr. That's all we can really do here. The whole focus is the Conkeldurr and trying to discard as many cards as we can from my opponent's deck. I have some big attacks coming up here. We're going to take a knockout on my opponent's Miltank. Sure, they might have a backup Pokemon. They might have 2 backup Pokemons, but we are going to discard 4 cards from my opponent's top of their deck. I can assure you. We have an energy search, so we can actually get another energy card here, and if we can play out some more Pokemon, we might as well. Let's go ahead and take the first prize card on our side, dealing 160, and and we get a Tails instantly. So no cards are discarded from my opponent's side of the board. Of course, you do have to do it for each heads, but if the first thing that you flip is a Tails, then we don't get to discard any cards, and I couldn't be more disappointed. That is absolutely shocking. Conkeldurr, what are you doing? We've put in so much work for you to actually go in. We've given you 4 energy, and you give us nothing. But it looks like my opponent is working with us here. They want us to do something big and dramatic as well, rather than taking a knockout on our Conkeldurr. They're just hitting us for a little bit of damage. So we can go in, hit this defending Pokemon for 60. We get heads, and that's it. We get 1 heads. It is better than last time, and at the very least we did discard another Curlier from my opponent, so they're not able to get that into play, which is crucial to them getting Gallade out, of course. Now, they do have a Roller Skates, which hits the heads. Why is it my opponent that always gets heads? They had heads multiple times to paralyze us, now they're getting heads on Roller Skates. We need those heads, we need to discard cards from my opponent's deck, and honestly we need 22 of them, because that would really win us the game right here. But my opponent is not able to knock us out once again, even hitting us for weakness, dealing 100 damage. This Conkeldurr has a massive 240 HP, people. That is huge. 240 HP in the theme deck format. My opponent is struggling to knock out this massive behemoth Pokemon. Even with weakness, they're not able to knock out this Pokemon. Sure, we're not able to discard cards from their deck either, which I really would love to actually discard cards here, but doesn't look like that's going to be the case. They finally get the Gallade, which is going to help them actually deal some big damage here, especially with that Psychic weakness. But yeah, 240 damage is going to be massive. We do have that backup Conkeldurr now ready as our first one goes down, crashes down to earth, and we're going to have to go in with our backup. I think that is the only option, and we're going to have to keep attaching energy to it. Sure, my opponent has the Gallade, but we just don't care. We're going to keep attaching energy onto our Conkeldurr, make it as big as possible, and come on, give us heads every time here. No, no, not another Tails. We needed heads. What is going on, Conkeldurr? You're letting the side down. I don't care how big you are, you need to be able to discard their deck. You need to be able to mill all of their good cards. This Gallade is going to completely ruin you now, and it is not going to be a pretty sight, but here we go. They are hitting for 160 damage. It is not going to be enough in order to save them, though, or we do have a switching option here, so my opponent has to allow us to switch, or forces us to switch. I say allow, they're forcing us to switch, but yeah, we do only have 1 prize card on my opponent's side, and we are going to be getting hit for a bunch of damage, 80 damage or more I suppose, but this is fine. We're going to go ahead, attach onto the Gigalith here, and let's see what we get. Okay, we got a bunch of energy. We powered up the Gigalith in 1 turn. It's a miracle. We did have to discard our own cards and actually mill ourselves. I think we've milled more cards from ourselves than our opponents, but that's fine. My opponent is going to be hitting us for 80 and forcing us to switch once again, so we can go back into the Conkeldurr and we get more energy, so we can keep powering up the Conkeldurr, give it even more HP, and we can actually have a look here. It has a massive 260 HP. Sure, it only has 100 HP remaining, but that's fine. As come on, let's go. Come on, discard cards. You can do that. You can do it, Conkeldurr. Yes, 3. Okay, we'll take 3. You've managed to do 3. Well done, Conkeldurr. You did 3. That is the most you're probably ever going to do. My opponent does get the Pokemon Center Lady. Not that it is relevant, because they only have 1 prize card remaining, so it's not going to be super relevant whatsoever, but here we go. We can promote another Pokemon, despite the fact that my opponent has 1, and that is really unfortunate, but hey, we managed to get 3 Stage 2 Pokemon into play. We got 2 Conkeldurr rolling, one of which got up to 260 HP, which is insane. Probably the only time that that's ever going to happen, because it is against another basic beginner's deck there, but that's totally fine, because that was probably the most fun I've ever had with that theme deck. since pretty much starting the game. So let's get into another game, see if we can do any good against a modern deck. Highly doubt it, but we'll see what happens anyways. Now here we have another game, this time against a modern deck, and it is one of the best ones, Relentless Flame. One of the only decks which does have the potential to deal infinite damage, so the perfect counter to our infinite HP. But it looks like we have a pretty slow start. I mean, it is a pretty slow and terrible deck, but hey, we have a pretty slow start here, and at least we do have some energy that we can work with this time around. And we also have the Mienshao, which is allowing us to deal 50 damage on this following turn as a fairly efficient attacker, considering 50 damage for 2 energy is very efficient in this deck when we have other attackers which deal 70 damage for 4 energy. Very terrible and inefficient, but hey, the Mienshao in the early game is actually pretty useful. My opponent going for the timer ball here though, on their end to get a single heads, and it is their first turn of the game, so they're not going to be able to evolve this Charmeleon, or Charizard, Charmander into Charmeleon, into Charizard, all that good stuff, but that's fine by me. Oh, apparently they are. For some reason I thought that we were... Okay, never mind. I thought this was our first turn, but apparently it's not. I'm getting ahead of myself, but they have the Charmeleon already. They can probably get the Charizard pretty soon afterwards as well, but that's fine. We just need the damage in as quickly as possible here, and we can always find some attackers later down the line. So let's go ahead and attach all of these cards. We can play our energy search as well and get some more energy into the hand. But now our hand is pretty much completely dead. All we have is 50 damage to work with. So if my opponent doesn't get the Charizard, we get the knockout. If they do, then they get the knockout. I'm going to guess that they do indeed have it, but let's not put any bets on just yet. We do have to try and stay optimistic, and looks like my opponent doesn't have it. Oh my god, the terrible basic orange fighting deck that you get as a beginner from all these years ago has finally won a game. The Mienshao putting in work, being so efficient, we actually took a victory against a modern deck. As my opponent just, I guess they just bricked. Maybe they didn't have anything in their hand. Maybe they're new. I have no clue, but I guess we can say we're able to win a game with this deck. Not very convincingly, but hey, we'll take a victory with the deck. Might as well. But that first game that we played anyways, that was the pinnacle of the deck. Certainly showed off how well it works. So we'll leave it there. We'll take the victory while we can. And I'm pretty sure if we play any more games, we're probably going to lose. So let's leave it as a victory and a win streak of 1. I'll see you guys in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this one. Be sure to give it a like if you did, as always. I'll see you in the next video.